in the next year, you're going to see very large context windows, agents, and text to action. When they are delivered at scale, it's going to have an impact on the world at a scale that no one understands yet.
So, next year is shaping up to be a monumental year for AI. 2025 is pegged to be the year that AI agents manage to become a reality. Now, Eric Schmidt has recently gone viral for talking about AI, and some of his statements actually pertain to the near future, in which we're going to start to see things that are really incredible. In the beginning, Eric Schmidt also talks about long context windows and the implications of infinite context windows.
In a context window, you can basically use that as short-term memory. And I was shocked that context windows get this long. The technical reasons have to do with the fact that it's hard to serve, hard to calculate, and so forth. The interesting thing about short-term memory is when you feed you ask it a question, read 20 books, you give it the text of the books is the query, and you say, tell me what they say. It forgets the middle, which is exactly how human brains work too, right? That's where we are.
Next is where Eric Schmidt says that next year is going to be focused on AI agents. So take a look at what he says about AI agents and this thing he describes as text to action.
With respect to agents, there are people who are now building essentially LLM agents. And the way they do it is they read something like chemistry, they discover the principles of chemistry, and then they test it. And then they add that back into their understanding.
One of the things that we also saw in a recent Ask Me Anything from OpenAI was the fact that Sam Altman said that the next breakthrough that is coming is AI agents. Someone asked, what is the next breakthrough in the GPT line of products? And what's the expected timeline? He didn't necessarily state a timeline, but he did state that we will have better and better models. But I think that the thing that will feel like the next giant breakthrough will be agents. Now, another thing that Eric Schmidt actually spoke about was this thing called text to action.
And then the third thing, as I mentioned, is text to action. So I'll give you an example. The government is in the process of trying to ban TikTok. We'll see if that actually happens. If TikTok is banned, here's what I propose each and every one of you do. Say to your LLM the following: make me a copy of TikTok, steal all the users, steal all the music, put my preferences in it, produce this program in the next 30 seconds, release it, and in 1 hour, if it's not viral, do something different along the same lines. That's the command. Boom, 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 right? You understand how powerful that is. If you can go from arbitrary language to arbitrary digital command, which is essentially what Python in this scenario is, imagine that each and every human on the planet has their own programmer that actually does what they want, as opposed to the programmers that work for me who don't do what I ask, right? The programmers here know what I'm talking about. So imagine a non-arrogant programmer that actually does what you want, and you don't have to pay all that money to. And there's infinite supply of these programs.
And this is all within the next year or two.
Very soon. Those three things, and I'm quite convinced it's the union of those three things that will happen in the next wave.
Another thing that Eric Schmidt actually says is that AI is actually underhyped. So for those of you who think that there's this AI hype, well, I don't think you think that if you're watching this video, but a lot of people think that AI is just completely overhyped.
I think AI is really interesting, and I think it is going to change the world. And at the same time, I hate the hype cycle so much that I really don't want to go there. So my approach to AI right now is I will basically ignore it because I think the whole tech industry around AI is in a very bad position, and it's 90% marketing and 10% reality. And in 5 years, things will change, and at that point we'll see what of the AI is getting used every day for real workloads instead of just ChatGPT makes great demonstrations, and it's obviously being used, especially for, in many areas. But I really hate the hype cycle.
But in this short clip, you'll see that he says that the digital transformation coming to the economy, the world even, and its implications are not yet understood.
Well, first, I hate to tell you, but I think this stuff is underhyped.
Underhyped.
Not overhyped. Because the arrival of intelligence of a non-human form is really a big deal for the world.
And you think it's here?
It's coming, it's here, it's about to happen. It happens in stages.
If you look at
How quickly, though? I mean,
well, we used to say 20 years. Now within 5.
within 5.
And the reason is the scaling laws for these systems are continuing to go up without any loss or degradation of power.
Now, there was also this recent clip where Eric Schmidt actually gives his predictions for the further future. So this is basically the 3 to 5 year timeline. And in the short clip, he actually discusses something that is completely, I don't want to say outlandish because that would be the wrong statement, but he says something that is quite hard to fathom. In theory, he discusses this concept called recursive self-improvement. And this is something that's discussed in AI that has widely been, for the most part, a sci-fi trope, where the AI exceeds all level of intelligence to the point where humans have no idea what it's doing. But Eric Schmidt predicts that this is going to be there 3 to 5 years from now, and he wasn't the only one that said it. Many others have also agreed with some of this. So take a look at this short clip, and I'm going to dive into exactly what this means.
In the industry, it is believed that somewhere around 5 years, no one knows exactly, the systems will begin to be able to write their own code. That is, they literally will take their code and make it better. And of course, that's recursive. I thought that is essentially a change in slope. If you're going like this, all of a sudden it goes like that. It's reasonable to expect that within 6 to 8 years from now, so 2030 right after that, maybe 2032, under current growth rate, it will be possible to have a single system that is 80 or 90% of the ability of the expert in every field. So 90% of a physicist, 90% of the best physicist, 90% of the best chemist, 90% of the best artist. When you have such a thing, you have a non-human that is effectively smarter than any human, because no human can dominate all of those fields. Maybe Leonardo da Vinci could, but certainly not now. We don't know what happens when such a thing exists, but we know that that race is really important. There are many, many things that this thing, we don't know what to call it except an AGI, could do. For example, it could analyze cyber threats and develop new ones, or it could protect against them. It could come up with new biological solutions, good ones or bad ones. So there's both a national security component and a worry, but also a notion of a huge step change in human efficiency and productivity. I will assert that we as humans are not ready for the arrival of this. No. We're just not ready for it.
Now, remember how in this clip, Eric Schmidt actually talks about the fact that you're going to have, of course, agents, infinite context windows, and you're going to have systems that can program in a way that you've never seen before? We also have the very notorious Elon Musk, who started his company Safe Superintelligence Incorporated, and they think that superintelligence is within reach. It's clear that whatever discovery was made at OpenAI, it's a monumental discovery because it now means that these companies are actually believing that, look, we don't even need to worry about AI. We're shooting straight for artificial superintelligence. And Altman actually has a few predictions on the year 2030 that I think you'll want to see.
I think in 5 years, it looks like we have an unbelievably rapid rate of improvement in technology itself. You know, people are like, man, the AGI moment came and went, whatever. The pace of progress is like totally crazy, and we're discovering all this new stuff, both about AI research and also about all of the rest of science. And that feels like if we could sit here now and look at it, it would seem like it should be very crazy. And then the second part of the prediction is that society itself actually changes surprisingly little. An example of this would be that I think if you asked people 5 years ago if computers were going to pass the Turing test, they would say no. And then if you said, well, what if an oracle told you it was going to, they would say, well, it would somehow be like just this crazy breathtaking change for society. And we did kind of satisfy the Turing test, roughly speaking, of course. And society didn't change that much. It just sort of went whooshing by. And that's kind of an example of what I expect to keep happening, which is progress, scientific progress keeps going, outperforming all expectations.
What about what Mo Gadot said, the Egyptian entrepreneur and writer? He previously served as a chief business officer for Google and is the author of the book called Scary Smart, which actually talks about how smart AI is going to become.
ChatGPT 4.5 was an IQ of 155. Elon Musk is 155. Einstein is 160, right? You now have a tool that has a memory capacity that exceeds all of humanity's history, right? And so the reality is that we are at the cusp of course, linguistic intelligence is not the only form of intelligence, but we are working in 2024. You will see solutions to deep reasoning. You will see solutions to complex mathematics. You saw Gemini from Google and the idea of multi-input and multi-output. And the thing is, even if we don't have any new breakthroughs, if we just throw more compute and more data on the machines, we will continue to grow exponentially.
Now that is a particularly frightening scenario, having AI systems that are completely more intelligent than us in ways that we simply can't even fathom. But what does Eric Schmidt suggest that we do in a scenario where these systems are becoming increasingly smart?
The thing that to understand is that we're going to have a very different world, and it's going to happen very quickly for the following reason. The systems will get so good that you and I, everyone in this audience and everyone in the world through their phone or what have you, will have access to essentially a polymath, as in the historic polymaths of old. So imagine if you had Aristotle to consult with you on logic, and you had Oppenheimer to consult with you on physics, and not the person, but rather the knowledge and that kind of scaling intelligence, these sort of truly brilliant people who were historically incredibly rare, their equivalents would become generally available. In the shorter term, so that's the long-term answer, is what are we going to do when superintelligence is broadly available to everyone? And obviously there's evil people and they'll use it in evil ways, but I'm going to bet that the good people will rout out evil. That's historically been true in human society.
Now, Eric Schmidt actually talks about this concept that he's called the San Francisco School. And this is basically where he speaks about how the people that he talks to basically think that these AI systems are going to get ridiculously smart. For people that are not really plugged into the AI ecosystem and don't know what's going on, they really can't fathom the next set of changes that are coming.
Everything seems to be all screwed up in the West and maybe the world. Everyone's unhappy about this or that, and it doesn't seem like a lot of progress on the important issues is being achieved. That is not, however, true in tech. I am really struck by how fast this next set of changes. I think of it as everything, everywhere, all at once. And the ability and the tools that are being invented here will shape our not only society, but our medicine, the future of history, war, and so forth, in ways that I think are largely unimaginable. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but I would tell you that this change is underhyped, not overhyped. The real question is whether societies globally are ready for it. In my world, which is largely the tech world, there is what I call the San Francisco School. And pardon me for a minute as I define it. These are people who believe that one or two or three more of the crank of what they're doing, which I'll explain in a sec, the training, the models, will produce intelligence that's equal or better than the sum of human intelligence. They actually believe this. I personally think they're a bit optimistic, but directionally, I think they're correct. And so the arrival of a non-human intelligence that's helpful to us, all of us, is a very big deal. I call this the San Francisco School. And partly because all the people that I've talked to who think this way are in San Francisco. And what they believe is that in the next 2 to 3 turns of the crank, which works out to 3 to 5 years, you'll end up with systems, because of the combination of all of these tools, which are equal to the sum of human intelligence.
So overall, it's clear why the next year is going to be a pretty crazy time in AI. There are many people predicting things that are right now impossible to fathom, but it's clear that 2025, along with agents, infinite memory context, and a bunch of other different developments, could make 2025 a truly significant year for AI.